They laughed when she mounted that battered scope, whispered that Marines didn't need fairy tales or miracle glass, and smirked at the number she wrote on the board, 3,800 meters. So before the truth drops and silence takes the room, hit subscribe. Because this story isn't about a shot, it's about what happens when certainty meets someone who has already measured the wind and decided to pull the trigger. They mocked her scope the moment she unpacked it, the jokes coming easy and lazy the way confidence does when it's never been tested. A couple of veteran spotters nudging each other as if they were watching a street magician set up a trick with a bent deck, the rifle range on the high desert plateau shimmering with heat and arrogance. The kind of place where records were talked about like trophies already earned, and she let them laugh because Lieutenant Isla Marino had learned a long time ago that noise was a gift when you needed to listen. Her scope looking wrong by their standards, older housing, custom etchings, glass that didn't flash brand names, while the Marines around her ran the latest optics with bright turrets and proud decals. Someone muttering that you couldn't see God at that distance let alone steel, another saying the wind would eat the bullet alive, and Isla nodded, not in agreement but in acknowledgement. Because she had already walked the valley at dawn and again at noon, already felt the thermal shift creep like a tide across the scrub, already logged the micro-eddies curling off the basalt outcroppings that made wind charts lie. And when the range master called a brief she stepped forward with a calm that read like indifference to those who didn't know the difference, laying the rifle down as if it were a sleeping animal and not the sum of years of loss and practice. Her spotter a quiet corporal named Ree who had learned to trust numbers more than bravado, and as the Marine snickered about that scope she dialed nothing, touched nothing, just breathed and looked. Because the twist they didn't see coming was that the glass wasn't meant to magnify more but to reveal less, to strip shimmer and ego and leave only truth, the reticle etched by hand by a man who believed lines should tell stories if you listened. And Isla listened as the valley spoke in heat and pressure and the distant plate hung like a rumor against the horizon, so far it felt theoretical, and when someone asked if she wanted to warm up she said no. Because warming up was for muscles and this was for patience, and the clock ticked and the jokes faded into that brittle quiet that comes when people realize they are about to be proven wrong or right and either way it will hurt. The range master raising a brow at the distance chalked on the board and asking if she wanted to revise it, and she shook her head. Not because she was stubborn but because the number was already wrong in the way all numbers are until they meet reality. Henry whispered the last wind call and Isla closed her left eye and the world narrowed to a single breath and a memory she kept locked away of a rooftop in another country where a wrong assumption had cost a friend everything. The bullet leaving the barrel without drama, no cinematic crack to save the moment, just physics finally agreeing to be useful, and the Marines leaned in expecting nothing, expecting a miss so wide it would become a story they told over beers. Expecting the scope to be the punchline, but the silence stretched and stretched because at 3,800 meters time becomes a character. It walks into the room and asks everyone to wait, and Isla waited with it, counting not seconds but sensations. The pressure in her jaw, the smell of hot metal, the way the mirage flattened as the sun ducked behind a thin cloud like a held breath, and when the sound came back it wasn't a clang at first, it was a hesitation, a question mark. Then the plate rang in a way that felt like an answer nobody wanted, and the range froze because disbelief is heavier than steel, the jokes dying mid-syllable, someone laughing once too loud and then stopping. The range master checking the cameras as if the world had glitched, re-exhaling for the first time in a minute, and Isla staying still because the twist wasn't the hit, it was that she hadn't aimed where they thought. The scope's reticle not centered on the plate but offset into empty air where the wind would carry the truth back home. And when the replay rolled and showed the arc like a thought finally completed, the Marines went quiet not because of awe but because of recognition, the kind that tells you you've been measuring yourself with the wrong ruler. And someone asked what scope it was and Isla said it was a map, and when they pressed she told them the map was older than their jokes and drawn by someone who had learned the hard way that seeing farther sometimes means trusting less. And the range master cleared his throat and said records would need verification and Isla nodded because records were for books and this was for memory. And as the day wore on the whispers turned into questions and the questions into respect and still she said little, because another twist waited in the shade, the shot hadn't been the goal. The goal had been to expose the range's assumptions before a real mission punished them for it, the plateau chosen because its winds lied the same way the valley overseas had lied. And as the Marines recalibrated their charts and pride, she packed the rifle with care and the scope last, someone finally asking why she let them mock her, and Isla smiled then, small and sharp, and said because when people think they know the ending they stop watching the middle. And the range fell quiet again, not frozen now but attentive, the way it should have been all along. The sun dropping low and the plate swinging gently in the distance like a bell that had been rung for a reason, and if you listen closely you can still hear it asking who you trust when the wind decides to teach you a lesson. Because this was only the first day and the desert had more to say.